Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
What I was saying before we got the screen froze is I've calmed down a lot now, but I was very, 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 very upset at the mayor because of his comments about canvassing. Um, that was a historical moment. Um, and the college students that I had with me were very aware. I made sure I sat them down to give them the importance of why it was necessary for us to do what we were doing. And I had students from all walks of life. I was so proud of them because they were adamant about doing what they did. Two of my daughters were there.
You guys basically went out on vans and were getting people to the polls.
Yes, we actually did it for 8 hours a day. So it wasn't just a couple of hours. We actually went out 8 hours a day, and they gave up a lot of time. They made a lot of money. And their sole purpose was to go door to door. There were 30,000 registered Democrats that had never voted. And so we targeted that voter base. Well, guess what? The Republican Party did the same thing. They targeted their Republican voter base. Nothing that we did was any different than they did. How the mayor was able to stand before an audience of people and say that we paid, where he got this figure from, I don't know. We paid $75 to a person to vote. And then he takes the story and gives it some wings and says that he went out and bought 5 more people back. And they got paid $75 to vote. And he said he saw a man that had $75 checks turned face down on the table. Where did he see this at? In what planet did that occur? Who did that? Because I know all the different groups that were canvassing, but the week in which he's speaking of, there were only 2 groups out there, and that was myself and Omega Calhoun that were out canvassing, and neither of our groups did any of what he stated. So we're very, we're just, when I talked to Brother Calhoun on the phone, he was upset, and and the mayor has placed himself in a position where he could actually be sued, for those type of comments. They were outlandish. Those were criminal comments, as a matter of fact.
Well, he suggested, right, that people were bordering on criminal activity.
Yes.
He literally says that nobody looks into it. It's such a gray area that they don't even prosecute and all this kind of thing.
So if anybody that he should be speaking to, he should make every effort to sit down and speak with me to, maybe clear this thing up a little bit. If it was the other way around, he'd want it done. I've tried to contact him about retracting the statement that N.A.A.C.P was lined up with him with Antonio Smith, and he's refused to get back with me.
Okay. So, can I ask a question about it? And it probably, and you don't want to answer it, that's fine, because I don't put you on the spot. But to me, like, all of that is a manifestation of white superiority.
Yes, it is. Without a doubt, it is.
Okay, I just want, what I'm saying, because when most white folks think of white superiority, white supremacy, right, it's about the Klan or the Boogaloo Boys or the Proud Boys. But I think this is a really, can we just sit with this spot for just a second? Like, to me, this is how it works in everyday in institutions with upstanding church-going white folks. Does that make sense? And do you think that's a fair critique?
I think it's a very fair critique, because I believe that he feels that I'm beneath him and he doesn't have to answer to me. I pose no threat to him. Certainly he feels that I can't increase his income in any way possible. And, I even have to go as far as to say that the way he's dealt with the entire situation speaks highly of his character in a very negative way. I believe that when you look at the situation and the way he's laid it out, it kind of spells out the fact that he feels superior in some way. A very smug individual, and he's very confident nothing's going to happen to him.
Yeah, and I'm, because I take the position, those of us who've been kind of raised, socialized as white, myself included at times, right? We've kind of got this disease of we know better, right? Or we don't have to answer to, or we don't, or we simply don't know how, we don't have to know about other people. You know, even if we're in charge of providing services or representing them as an elected official, you know, so it to me, because I manifested male, you know, superiority in relation to women at times. And so I don't want to sound like I'm beating up on him, because I think at times it's conscious in us and sometimes it's just unconscious. But I guess for me, when people are looking for examples of systematic male supremacy in this case, right, this is such a really good example of how it works to me. That some of us don't even have to think or ponder that, even when all these folks are telling me, and I'm getting, you know, messages from people who don't look like me, that I've done something that has affected them, that I'm going to put up the wall, and I'm not even going to get curious about what the hell they're talking about.
Exactly. It's something that I think America has to address in order for us to get better, in order for us to heal as a nation. We are the laughing stock of other countries. Many other countries look at us right now and they consider us no longer a threat, no longer a superpower. They look at us and think that there's this unity, this harmony among our nation, even in the midst of our government. And the local governments are just as important as the national government and the state level government. What happens to this city takes we're a reflection of him. If he doesn't reflect unity, neither will the community. He's got to be the chief. He's a spokesperson for that. He's a spokesperson for the city. He's a spokesperson for the city council, as a matter of fact. It's his job to encourage the council to stand together and to fight for all people. If he is not the first person that does it, then who will? You know, he's got to be it's almost like being a pastor of a church. I have to be the first to partake of all that I preach and teach. And if I'm not, then I'm ineffective as a pastor.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on kind of the ethics process itself? Because I know I and others of concerned clergy have been a little concerned about you know, it's kind of and this is one of the criticisms of internal, you know, investigations in police departments, true, like that if there's an accusation that something's gone wrong and the thing that you've made that accusation against gets to investigate its own behavior, there's always this doubt that you're going to have an authentic process where folks are held accountable. And in fact, I shared this with a city council person a couple of days ago. You know, I've been, and it's been a long time since I've been before city council, but I really don't see the point anymore because it's kind of ritualistic. You have to get approval to talk to them, right? And then once they say it's okay for you to talk to them, you've got 3 minutes to lay out the case. And sometimes it's a complicated case that takes more than 3 minutes, but then they don't actually have to even respond, and they don't respond publicly, right? And I don't say this to fault any individuals, but it seems to me, if we want accountable governments and transparent governments, right, local all the way up, that's a problematic process. As well as, you know, when I contacted Mark Barber initially about filing a complaint against the mayor, he kind of basically said, we don't really have a complaint process, you know, and so then he sends me the ethics stuff where the mayor actually gets to pick one of the people, and I'm fine with that. But are you okay with their process and kind of the structure of it? Or, I mean, what do you think?
I'm totally disturbed by their process. Their process serves as a slap on the wrist committee, if you had to ask me about it. And I believe that this particular issue is going to wind up finding itself in a courtroom somewhere, simply because the way this process is set up, they get to choose the people who review them.
Yeah.
And the accused is getting to choose the person that will be a part of the committee that will review him. Well, he's a Republican, and the person that the mayor has chosen is a Republican. He's a city official, and the person that the mayor has chosen is a city official. So he's chosen a comrade, someone that he has a great familiarity with, someone who supports him, someone who supports his leadership. I don't see the person that he supports being unbiased. So I'm very disturbed at the process. As a matter of fact, I would even probably, challenge the city council to maybe look at such action and ask the mayor to remove himself from the selection process and maybe pass that on to the mayor pro tem.
Yeah, it seems to me that the person that's in trouble should recuse themselves.
Exactly.
Right. Versus, but I could see that, some people making the argument that they get to choose a person. I don't know, but it's so strange. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think, do you have any, before I tell you what I think, like, what do you think will happen now that they've still got to pick the third person, but once that committee of three is, they'll look at the complaint we submitted. Maybe, I hope they listen. We don't even know what they're going to do, whether they listen to the audio or not. Will they ask for more evidence? Can we submit more evidence? Because it doesn't sound like any of that will happen unless they think it's a warranted complaint.
Well, I made a comment a while back, and I won't use the name, but and I didn't address this issue. I made a comment about the mayor, the city manager, and the city officials' view on civil rights agencies. It was said to them in the past, not necessarily concerning this complaint, that the civil rights agencies didn't pose a threat to them. And that comment was made about a year ago. And I was privileged to the results of that conversation. So it's a very factual statement. And so for probably the past year and a half, 2 years, they've never really honored our complaints because they felt they didn't have to, that we posed no threat. Well, the problem with that was not that we didn't pose a threat, but because the agency was in a revamping and stage, and each time that these problems came up, we were still in a rebuilding process, and our charters and paperwork were not necessarily had been completed, but we are now fully.
Folks are working other jobs too. This isn't what people do full time, right?
But you're talking to an individual here who's a retired individual who has nothing but all day and night to research books. I would very much like to go to law school. I mean, I did pretty much 3 years worth of work on the black contractors fight, pretty much any work that any attorney could have done, and very versed in those areas. And I really would like to go to law school, and that's going to be my aim in the next couple of years or so. But you're looking at a bird dog, you're looking at a bloodhound, a pit bull of some sorts, that when these things happen, I don't give up on them. And now that we are a fully functioning agency that has all the rights and responsibilities of every other chapter of the N.A.A.C.P in every state, we're full steam ahead. And we won't let this go until something's been done about it. So if you didn't think that we were a threat before, and I shouldn't even use the word threat, you don't feel that we are serious about pushing this through, then you're wrong, because we're going to push this thing until there's an end result that's satisfying to the people.
Yeah. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you wanted to talk about?
Well, I guess the recap of this podcast, I think many are going to watch the podcast and they're going to be split down the middle on what they think this podcast is about. And I'd like to kind of touch on something you and I talked about in the past, and that is healing this city. There comes a time when no matter what you've done wrong, no matter who's done it wrong, I think, and this is going to probably get me in some trouble, but I really have to be honest. I think both sides, there's a major disenfranchisement towards African Americans, not just in the United States, not just in the state of Georgia, but inside this city. But there's also an equal, I shouldn't say an equal, but there's also disparity created in retaliation in return. There has to be a point in which we finally decide that we're all going to get along. Somebody must be the starting point for unity. And as Christians, you and I and the rest of the pastoral coalition, the concerned clergy, the other agencies that are involved, will be the beginning of that healing process. We must be that rolling stone that takes flight and go downhill, and the gravity will let everything else attach. And we must be the leaders of that healing process that must occur. I am very happy that we do not have many of the problems that other cities do have. We could be so much worse. This could be a Ferguson. This could be an Atlanta situation. This could be a Minnesota situation, but it's not. And we're going to have to learn to put some things behind us. We're going to have to learn to heal some of the past and deal with them. And we're going to have to be truthful about what's going on. I believe at the centerpiece of all of this is the love of money. Money, money, money. And it's about time we decide that we're going to heal as a community. This community is not made up of just white people. It's not made up of just Black people. It's made up of everybody, a little bit of everybody. There's a little bit of everybody in this community. And in order for us to move forward, we don't need another 9/11 to make us go back to church. We could have been Austin, Texas, just 16 hours, 16, 17 hours away. We could have been Austin, Texas just a few weeks ago. What do you think would have happened to Valdosta had we been hit with all that ice and all that snow and been in the same boat? There are people just 16 hours away that are breaking up their furniture to stay warm. There are people 16 hours away that are melting snow just to drink water. There are people right now, we have the choice of drinking water, whether we want to drink from the fountain, whether we want to drink from the faucet, or whether we want to drink bottled water. And just down the road, these people are eating snow in order to survive. We must think about that. There is a God that is sitting high and looking low. There is a God watching every one of our actions, that's listening to our words and hearing our thoughts, and is searching our hearts. He's compelling us to be brothers. And he's told us in his word that if we are not brothers on this side of glory, that we can't rest in heaven on the other side. So do we continue to fight for who gains the advantage? Or do we find a way to get along? Do we find a way to be brothers and sisters in Christ? Or do we continue to be adversaries? There has to be a starting point. You, myself, Pastor Matheson, Pastor Francis, others, Pastor Napier, we all have to find a way to heal and put these things behind us. And I don't want anyone to be misled about what this podcast is about. While we're pointing out the egregious errors that have occurred, we're also stating that we want to put it all behind us, move forward, and correct these things so that they don't happen again. Let's go on and be a good Valdosta. When I look at the mayor, I really don't think, and it's just my own personal opinion, I was there. I was at the debate, and I heard the things he said. He was another Donald Trump. No matter what question was posed to him, his response was, we're going to get Valdostans jobs, because I pointed out that Valdosta's unemployment rate was higher than the state average at that time. And it was also equal to the nation's unemployment average was lower than ours. So we're in a bad situation. His response is, we're going to get jobs. We're going to make things happen. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to make sure everybody gets a piece of the pie. Well, that didn't happen. And it's time to put that aside. Now, I posed the question to him, and I can, at the time when the debate occurred, I asked him if he could name the top 10 employers in Valdosta, and he couldn't. And the top 10 employees in Valdosta were Moody Air Force Base, South Georgia Medical Center, Valdosta Board of Education, Lowndes Board of Education, E-Lead, Fresh Beginnings, Walmart, Home Depot, Lowe's, all textile retail industries and very little corporate, a very small corporate structure. That tells us that we need to do better. And the mayor was unaware of any of those things. So how is he really truly able to lead us as a mayor if he didn't even know the infrastructure and the makeup of the city? That lets us know he's not mayoral quality. He's not mayoral material.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for making time today. And again, I'm sorry, this has been great. We've talked a couple of times, and we've got tons to talk about. So I've enjoyed it, and I'm glad you could make time today, and I appreciate you making time today.
Well, again, I think you really don't know what this does for me, because in the 15 years I've been here, I've been wanting to see a coalition of people get together, of more than just Black people, more than just white people, but just people, period, that were like-minded. And it's refreshing to be around like-minded people. And you have been instrumental in joining groups of people that have attempted to come together in the past, and it wasn't necessarily successful. And I hope that this will continue, that we will be able to tackle a lot of issues. You know, kind of one last thing before I go, there is a situation that we will be addressing here in the near future. This young man that was in Adel, Georgia, very similar situation, Adel, Georgia, he's a young Black male who's now deceased, young white girlfriend, 2 children. And he placed on his Twitter feed, he said he's the type of guy that they will kill and commit and say he committed suicide. That was June 23rd of 2020. June 26th, he left home, went to Jacksonville, Florida, and was later found on the 28th with a gunshot wound to the left-hand side of his head in Camden County, not far from Ahmaud Arbery. Mm-hmm. No one even knew that this occurred. And it was called a suicide the very day that they found him. So we're investigating that case right now to determine the outcome. The irony of it all is the young man had registered to vote, had renewed his license. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation and Camden County Sheriff's Department refused to do an autopsy. We had an independent autopsy done. The pathologist stated that in 30 years of pathology, he'd never seen someone eat before they committed suicide. So we're dealing with a case that will probably come up again. And, you know, just to kind of toss it out there, hopefully, you know, we'll get to talk again, and you could be the platform to kind of talk about that case. I've done about a year's worth of investigations on that case, and we're nearing the end. And a lot has come out about the case, which leads me to believe that he did not commit suicide. Gotcha. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about that again.
Yeah, I'd love to. And if we can do anything, just let me know.
Sure, sure.
Well, thank you, Brother Neal. I appreciate it.
God bless you. God bless you. God bless you.